Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Roswell, New Mexico. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So in the aftermath of last episode, everyone in Roswell was a witness to the storms and the comets and just everything that was going on. And luckily for Max now being intern sheriff, he's in a position where he can feed whatever narrative he needs to feed to Roswell. Because otherwise, I mean, I'm sure like if it was the previous sheriff or if it was Kyle's mom, they probably would have found a reasonable explanation for it. But Max has even more motivation, more than them, to come up with a narrative, which Liz actually gives him one. There's a scientific explanation for what's going on, even though we know that science was caused by some science fictional stuff. We, as the audience, know that it was a triad of them doing stuff that led to all of that. So obviously, let's focus on Mac's side of things. Him working with Cam and Dallas, bringing him into the fold as they investigate. Because Dallas wants to help out. He's like, yo, I'm part of the fold now. But Dallas kind of got reserved to just keeping an eye on Michael, which he didn't do any of that at all this episode. But it's because I think Max is so used to it just being the trio of them. Plus, like, their outside sources. Like, it's just been them as the three aliens for so long. Obviously, excluding, Jones and, God. I'm blanking on his name now. I don't feel like even looking it up right now, but I'm trying to remember Isabel's husband's name. Noah. I said I wasn't going to look it up, but I decided to look it up. They're like the only other aliens, so like, but amongst their clique, it's always just been Michael, Max, and Isabel. So like, you kind of get used to that, and I guess you don't want to like. It still has kind of taken some used to of like, right, we're in the mix of something and have it. Obviously, they brought Dallas into it last season because he had a major role to play in all that. So now, but he wants to help out with the investigation because they're trying to figure out what it was that the aliens stole from the bank. Obviously, it wasn't money, and it's like, to their knowledge, what was in the safety deposit box? It's like there was nothing really taken. But then he points out there was a lamp in particular. So I'm assuming it was like the base of the lamp. So maybe something probably alien related was hidden in there a long time ago, and they were tracking it down. So cause we still don't fully know what their powers are. Cause we fully spend enough time in this episode with Bonnie and Clyde. It seems like Clyde's ability might be a bit of a teleportation because he was over there and then all of a sudden that guy turned around and he was there. So, but I don't know which one of them is the one that has the power to like memory wipe people. So it's similar to Isabel's power, but it seems a little different. So, we didn't really even get to see it like fully utilized. We just saw it. We just keep seeing the aftermath of said ability. So now they're still one step behind, but then it turns out that the Bonnie and Clyde are interested in Graham, the little show that he's putting on, because obviously like he's the alien dude, despite Max and the others trying so hard to like shut him down, or at the very least be like, yeah, you just seem a little crazy, and like Max making a joke at his expense, talking about his low IQ and whatnot, right? So, but he's like, oh, I found something and it's got the same color as the alien glass, so it's like, okay, he's definitely on to something. I wish he wasn't, but apparently he is. Which, spending time with Bonnie and Clyde, really quickly circling back to that, it is interesting. Bonnie, she is more inclined to like want to know more about the world. I'm sure she's the one that gave them their names. Because the other one, what's her name? Terka? I'm probably butchering that. It's like something like that. Like Terska or something like that. I'm wondering, is Bonnie the one who named it? Because she's the one that's, as I brought up last episode, amongst the other two, she seemed the most reluctant to really go forward with all this, because she likes humanity. Because of Oasis circumstances, it's like they're so young that they never got to see Oasis in its heyday, or maybe if they were super young at the time. So, because to be fair, we don't know, because that was over 50. That was like well over 50 years ago. Because at this point in time, it's like what, more like 80, pushing 90 maybe, because they landed here 50 years ago, but they didn't come out of their pods until like decades. What? I'm trying to remember all the yeah. They didn't come out until like the 90s or something like that, right? So yeah, so it's been 80 years, yeah, basically. So 80 years away from their planet, and a lot could change in that 80 years. Because even Jones doesn't know what's what, because he was locked up, so he wouldn't know what's going on on Oasis. So things could be even worse post them all leaving. So that's what I'm saying, that because they're young enough that maybe they never got to ever see Oasis in its prime and its beauty, and so Bonnie wants to enjoy it, but Clyde is like, no, this is a primitive planet. They're basically going to be their own destruction. But he kind of enjoys certain aspects of it, but he's almost like, right, let's not get so wrapped up in it, because for him, he's like, I've already seen the Armageddon of one planet. I don't want to live through another one. So what their plan is necessarily, it seems unclear. Because I was wondering, once again, is it like a Zod, Kryptonian thing across most storylines of basically terraforming Earth into the new Krypton? I wonder if it's similar to that. Like, what are their plans exactly? Is they going to try and make this their new home? Is that the ultimate plan, to come and invade this planet Viltrumite style? Probably, I doubt they have the grandiose of like super villain plan of like, let's conquer the entire, well, not just this galaxy, every galaxy. I doubt they have that plan. So not full-blown Viltrumite, but Viltrumites to a much smaller scale, which would be the Kryptonians plan. I'm curious. But Max and them do encounter them. And I referenced it last episode, like, they don't know Jones is dead, so maybe Max could use that to his advantage. They immediately brought that up and immediately got rid of that because Max made a mistake. They're like, oh, I can't wait to meet Bonnie, because he assumed that it was just Bonnie and Clyde, not realize, because he probably thought like Bonnie was like the head honcho or maybe the other person to this, but sadly they're taking orders from someone else, and it's like, that's not the person. I wonder, does she in particular have a special connection to Jones? The fact is, he was say that he was like, no, Bonnie's not the person I was talking about. And like, it must be like she's the leader of their triad, but she must be someone of crucial importance to. She was the first one awake, so it could be that she was like the main one that Jones contacted. That must be like his heir slash protege or something like that. So now that's kind of bust. So Bonnie knows, and obviously, what's her name, Terka, she's going to know too. So there's no using that whole like, oh, pretending to be Jones thing. They won't know what happened to Jones, but they can assume like, oh, he must not be alive. But I think it's interesting because immediately Clyde was like, oh, you're a clone, like you're a waste of DNA or something like that. It's like, Jesus. Okay, so they managed to get away, and they're still no closer. Clyde referenced something, and I'm gonna not remember it off the top of my head. It's one of those names like Quetzalcoatl. It's not that, but it's like, it's that level of name that you're like, I have no idea how to pronounce. I only know how to pronounce Quetzalcoatl just because I've heard it enough time. And even then, I'm probably still butchering it. But regardless, it's not anything like that. It was something, I think, with like a Phineas or something like that. It was something, I think it was something like that, Phineas or something, and I'm like, is that like an alien god you guys are trying to resurrect? Or like, because that's what they're like, oh, it'll rise again, and you're like, what is that? And even Max is like, what? So we get some inkling to their ultimate goal, but still plenty in the dark about it. So the problem, Max finds himself in a complicated situation too, because he's balancing so many hats. He has to be the sheriff keeping everyone in the dark, but he also has to be the sheriff that's helping protect everyone, but he also has his role as an alien too, trying to, and that combined with his role as a sheriff, it's kind of getting, so many hats he has to wear, and that it's hard kind of balancing, because I think he feels like he's kind of failing on all fronts. Once again, Max isn't as strong as he was before, because I think he's kind of lapsed with some of his power, so he, maybe he's standing a fairer chance if he kind of beefed up with his powers and such. But to be fair, Clyde, I think, kind of blindsided them in that moment. But ultimately, he ended up running into Anasta, who is going full-blown investigation into this, because Isabel was going to tell her everything, but ultimately didn't. I think it's just like, right, with you investigating all this, like, the other shoe dropped, and I don't think this is, because she wanted it to be a beautiful, intimate moment when she told her, but now it's kind of that moment got stomped on, and now she wants to go off and investigate. You can't spend any time together. You're trying to put the lid back on the proverbial, not even proverbial, the literal alien situation that's going on, because probably like you want things to be calm, quiet, and peaceful, and then you can pop the revelation to her like, hey, I'm an alien, kind of ease her into it. But with all this other alien stuff on top of it, it's not as easy to ease that into it, because it's going to be like it's all going to come out at once essentially. So Isabel's in this situation which that leads to Anasta questioning the patients, and she's like, oh, it's kind of weird, not one but a lot of those bank people from the bank have no memory. And it's like Kyle's like, oh, trying to explain it. He texts Isabel and hits her up, and Isabel's like, oh, I told a little white lie. It's like, yeah, but when it comes to a relationship, a lie is a lie. So they're not really pushing the whole you need to tell her thing anymore, but you need to do a lie is a lie no matter what, and a lie of omission, a white lie doesn't matter. So Isabel kind of feels bad about that. And the way Max chewed her out, he's like, I know we've had our conversations before, because you almost let it slip your mind. And it's like, right, I forgot they slept together last season too. I didn't even think about that. But he's like, right, we may not always agree on things, but when I'm wearing this badge, I am Sheriff Max Evans, and you won't just talk, the conversations between us always start with respect. So he was, to be fair, he was frustrated because everything that's going on, and Anasta's asking too many questions, and she's getting closer and closer because she will not relent. That was kind of an issue last season, but it's like, oh, that kind of died out. It's like, nope, we're back into full swing because she goes reporter mode, which I think that's the interesting thing, like a parallel between her and Liz. Both of them have a hard time putting their respective caps away. And like Liz having a hard time putting her turning off her scientist brain. Same thing for Anasta. It's like, I can't turn off my reporter brain. And so Max kind of dug into her, being like, right, just because you're the person sleeping with my sister, he's like, so kill the story eye. And she's like, or what? He's like, I'm sorry, it's just been a rough day, just please let this go. But she smells the story. She's like, I know something's up. So she sees Bonnie interact with Graham, and she knows something's up. And Isabel takes her somewhere else, but she's like, right, what is your brother trying to stop me from finding out? It's like, the fact is, you knew Cam and him were investigating, because the FBI isn't really all over this, because my source says that Cam hasn't reported him, so of course Cam's going to keep quiet about this until they remove the alien aspect to this whole investigation. So it's one thing after another, and Anasta will not stop. She smells this story, and it's a juicy story. Everyone in the know knows it's a juicy story, but they don't want her mixed up in this. And even Isabel doesn't, to the point she did what she promised she would never do it to someone she loved, especially considering knowing, like, right, the person she loved did it to her, Noah. Pushing her and to make her like, right, just drop this whole thing. And she had to leave because she was like, and that's the tough thing about, like, right, dating someone that's not in the know, that you will always have to lie to them. And now it's like to the point she's pushing so hard that you had no choice but to kind of push her mind, to push her where you want her to go, to drop all of this. But that won't last, because once she gets another whiff of the story, it's going to come back and she's going to go full throttle. So Isabel's got to decide what she's going to do about this. I think it's actually kind of sad that when that all went down, she was immediately going to go see Kyle, but Kyle's on a date with someone, one of his patients, was it granddaughter, like, wanted to ask him out. And, for Kyle, it's like, right, I can't sit on my hands and, like, wait for Isabel. Like, she's in a relationship, and I don't want to ruin that. So, like, yeah, I just got to take my time and just do my thing. So, and I think it's kind of heartbreaking, because, like, I think that's going to be, it's always sad that things never work out. It's not like Isabel and Anasta broke up. Because she didn't break up with her in that moment, not unless she's going to do it later, but I think she's going to try and find a workaround. But it's not even a breakup, it's just going through this. Who does she turn to? Like, her and Kyle have gotten so close that she is always there when, like, Kyle's always there to kind of lend her a shoulder and a hand, that she was almost like, oh, but now it's like, oh, you're with someone. And it's going to be interesting to see how that changes their dynamic now that things are where they are. So it's going to be interesting on that front. On another side of things, Liz gets visited by her former professor, Allie, her wife, who I was like, I kept thinking, it took me about a minute, but I was like, where do I recognize this actress from? And I was like, oh, Yellow Jackets. I was like, yeah, because I knew it was something super recent. Side note, I will mention it every time I think about it. If you have not seen Yellow Jackets, do yourself a favor and watch it. All of season 1 is done. It's coming back for a second season. It's still probably going to be a couple months before we get it, a second season, because like the show just only ended, like season 1 finished up like a couple months ago. Regardless, it's a really, really good show. But I was like, I wondered what was her name, because she was the investigator. Because if you're familiar with Yellow Jackets, I wanted to say her name. Wasn't it like Rebecca or something like that? Maybe not. Jessica? Something of that nature, maybe. Maybe more with something with a J's or... I feel like... I don't know. She was the one that Taissa hired to investigate the girls and be like, oh, who's running their mouth about all the stuff that went down when we disappeared. Well, for like everything that went down in those 19 months and stuff like that. So... she's here asking questions about all this stuff. She's like, I'm not much of a scientist. I'm more of the tech billionaire type. But I'm married to someone who is a scientist. And to help the woman I love who loves to investigate this type of stuff, like, there was an island that she wanted to investigate some stuff on, but she couldn't for legal reasons. And so her wife, Allie's wife, bought the island because when she's studying stuff, it makes her happy. And that makes me happy. And it's like, honestly, that's really sweet. And she's trying to drag Liz back into like, oh, like we could work together in partnership. And Liz is like, no, I'm taking a step back for my research. And she talks about it later. And, that was a big, big thing for her last season, was the realization of like, right, when I dive in, I dive in. I get consumed by my work and nothing else matters. And that costs her relationships and her friendships. So it's like, I don't want to go down that path again now that I'm in a better place. Now that me and Max are also in a better place. So... she doesn't want to go down that route again, so she was reluctant. But the lady's like, oh yeah, like Roswell, like, come on, there's so many, don't you want to deep dive into the mysteries? It's like, yeah, she's already deep dive into the mysteries. The point is to make sure that no one else goes deep diving into said mysteries. So, I figured Liz was going to keep her distance, but she actually goes to her advice because she's in class. I don't think I talked about it much last episode, but her being like teaching a class and being a teacher. I think it's her way to kind of stay connected with science without fully diving into it, but inspiring the next generation, these kids, and making sure that science is something they're interested in. That kid, Vanessa, I was almost like, oh God, teenagers suck. Because Vanessa was like, oh, you're up here talking about that St. Elmo fire being like the scientific term for like the phenomenon that they saw at the end of episode 1 at the beginning of this episode as well. It's like, till you go back to the stuff that's covered by the GED, I'll be going. I was like, oh, you suck. And everyone else is like, damn. I'm like, why are you such a dick? That was a completely unnecessary thing. Because also it's like, right, some of those things could still be applicable to what's on your GED. Because, science is like foundational, that like you find like the smallest things can lead up to the biggest things in science, going from like the smallest things to like the nucleus, the atoms, electrons, protons. It can always eventually lead you up to the biggest and craziest things that exist in our world when it comes to science and such, right? So I just thought that was such a dick thing to go through. But she's also got her respective issues, so I'm cutting her some slack. But at the time I was like, that's such a dick thing to do, and to make Liz feel bad because she's like, oh yeah, go if you want to go live out your life as a scientist or whatever. Your attempt at being a scientist, because she knows that Liz was kind of a scientist, but now you're like a teacher. Now it's like, oh, go do that on your own time. This is my time, and I need to study the stuff that's actually going to be on the GED. Once again, she could have handled that with a little bit more tact. But Liz feels like she's kind of failing, and Max, who talks about, hey, I still get tips from Michelle Valenti from time to time on like how to run things anytime I'm unsure where to go. So Liz doesn't have that mentor, which she kind of did, and she tried to go to get Allie, but her wife is like, yeah, but Allie, she gets sucked into her work. She's in Mexico right now, which you're like, well, that's where this all started at end of season 3, which I didn't know this. The actress who plays Allie is actually someone, I'm blanking on who she is, but I think she might have actually been the original Liz in the original Roswell show. I think so. It'd be very pertinent considering like they are tied together like that. The fact is, yeah, but like that was like a cameo thing. Like I don't think I knew that at the time. I only knew that because I recently was looking at stuff about Roswell for my nerd mode. And I just happened to look through some of the cast. It's like, oh, there's quite a... I knew there was going to be some familiar faces amongst the cast. Like, I know, Katherine Heigl, for example. was in the Roswell. Like, she's one of those names, but like there's other actors in the show. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were in this. Oh, I didn't know you were in it. Like, it went down like that. But I found out, like, oh, I wanted, like I said, I think it's the actress who played Liz in the original show who plays Allie. It was a nice, like, wink and nod, a little cameo in that regard. But yeah, even if she's not the one who played Liz, she's definitely she's an actress from the original series regardless. I think she was Liz, but she could have been someone else. Putting that aside, she is someone that gets consumed with work, and it's like, right, she's in right. I was kind of lost track of my point. She was in Mexico when everything kind of went down, so you're like, is she dead? Did they kind of use her and then move on, or what? That's the question. Because she's like, yeah, I haven't seen her. She's in Mexico, but it's like, right, her job is typically when she gets sucked into work, she doesn't respond to text and messages. To be fair, finding out what happened to Alex makes me think maybe the same thing happened to Allie, and that's more so why she hasn't contacted, but her wife isn't going to think too much of it. Or maybe she does know something's up and it's related to all this, so that's why she's trying to get close to Liz to try and find out what actually happened to her wife in some shape or form. But, you know, because I get that feeling like she's that scientist that's got some ulterior motive. We'll have to wait and see, but she ended up giving Liz advice because for her, she doesn't get consumed by her work. She makes sure not to get consumed by it. And I'm trying to remember exactly what her words were to Liz on how to do that and not get consumed by it. I forgot what her exact words were. Because that advice led her to helping out Vanessa, which now Vanessa's going to be working at the restaurant and everything, which I love that whole thing where at the beginning, Isabel was making one for Anasta, but then like she handed it to Arturo, and Arturo was like, great, you actually, okay, tables are over there, like you got 5 minutes to get ready. And she's like, wait, what? And Liz just hands her the antennas. It's like, yeah, you're going to be working here for a bit. Because I think that even took Kyle back for a second. It's like, yo, look at you wearing that. Like, it wasn't like oh, why are you wearing that? It was that, but it's almost like whoa, like, why are you wearing that? It's like, yeah, I'm sure that kind of, I mean, that's a very, it looks very nice on both Liz and Isabel. Let's just say about that. It's a very, yeah, seeing a lovely, if you're into ladies, it's a very, very nice outfit to see a lovely woman in. I'd say that in the most like nervous, like weird way went about saying it. It's kind of sexy. That's the point I'm trying to make. So yeah, moving past that. But the point I was making is Liz knows about Vanessa's circumstances, looked into her, and found out that it's not like a parole officer or isn't a reason why she's trying to get a GED. Like it's like family reasons, like whether like her mom or dad or somebody got sick and paying for medical bills, and she wants to go off to college. And I think Liz can also understand wanting to, like, right, when you have complicated family circumstances on whether or not you can afford college and whatnot, but also it's like, hey, I'm going to do this to help you out. Like, you could work here to kind of get some money necessary, because this will help with the things she's trying to give. The thing she gave her will help with tuition, but there's also like textbooks, and it was like almost it was all the other stuff, because college is pretty expensive, like, and not just tuition. Obviously you have to buy your own books and stuff like that. So I'll go ahead and talk about it here in case you didn't see it. I brought this up because I was curious, because there hadn't been any mention of Rosa at all in the first episode. It wasn't until I saw the Prey trailer that, the actress who plays Rosa, Amber Midthunder, is the lead in that. So I was wondering, like, oh, maybe while this was filming, she was all filming Prey. So she might be in this season, she might not. That's basically the comment I'd put last episode. I didn't even think about that until after the episode done. I was like, oh, the fact is they did. But like I said, like by the time I'd uploaded the review, I was like, oh, the trailer had dropped at the time, so that's why I left the comment. So once again, if you didn't see it, I'm just including that here. So whether or not she's going to be in, I hope we do get to see her some more, just because it is retroactively has now become the final season. So I hope she does get to make some final appearance in some shape or form. But other than that, in this episode, we had the whole situation with the locust that Liz received, and it turns out that when you cut it open, because it's gotten mutated, that the goo inside of it that is alien glass colored ends up sticking to the nearby panel in Michael's his underground garage of sorts. His workshop, essentially. So now he's investigating that. So it's Alex, and Alex wants to take it to Deep Sky. Michael's like, no, I'm going to work on it here. Alex, no, we have better tech. No, I'm going to do it here. But it's because and I think it's so ironic considering, oh, here's this special thing of Alex's last episode. You broke it, but he kind of forgave you. And he was just like, no, like, the fact is I don't need that anymore. And now it's like, here's something kind of you're clinging on to from your past that now you're like, no, Alex, I can't let you take it. And even Sanders is like, oh, like that. You're not going to get Alex to help? Like, oh, you can't trust him with? He's like, of course I can, but, for Michael, that panel represents everything. When he knew nothing, that was kind of his hope that he held on to about this could be the key to getting home. But Sanders talked about, yeah, but Alex loves you, and Alex will not only loves you, but your dreams are his dreams as well. So of course he'd respect that. Basically, considering what life is, you don't want to go through that alone. You got to trust in the people that kind of go along that love and those dreams along with you. And he's just kind of like, the fact is he's getting that advice from Sanders probably bothers him the most. But it's like, yeah, he takes that opportunity and tells Alex that it's like, right. That was where I was because I didn't know anything about myself. I wanted to go home, but you, Alex, are my home. So go ahead and take it. But Alex is going to go out and he's, because he's hoping to be back in a couple days rather than weeks. The time it would take him to collect all the other balloons. The ones that maybe have some interaction with these insects, because the locusts have all been like the alien goo inside them is giving them a hive mind of them all heading towards alien stuff. In particular, this one in particular obviously latched on to his console. So the question is, well, where are the other ones heading? And Alex at the end of the episode finds a whole bunch of them and obviously gets drawn into a trap by I keep blanking on it. It's like Tereska, I think might be the name. I've literally said it different times every time throughout this recording. But why she's planning, what part Alex is going to play in Jones's contingency plan, we'll see. But the fact is, the moment that all went down, a symbol popped up on that console, and I'm like, okay, like, are they doing stuff that's affecting that console in particular? Is it going to resonate some stuff? Because Dallas is currently looking into all those symbols and stuff. I think trying to learn as much as possible. And I love that you have kind of a thing between him and Cam, because Cam was like, yo, what's this thing? And it's like, and all Max could do was kind of shake his head like, oh, really? It's like, yo, and he's like, oh, when they first met and shook hands, he read her mind and saw what she had in mind. He was like, I'm going to have to turn down that temptation. I'm like, you are still a preacher, so like, I know priests take a vow of celibacy. Do preachers take a vow of celibacy? But maybe it's just kind of like with everything going on, I probably shouldn't be so giving into temptation, man of God and such. But, that's going to be an interesting thing. Once again, I like everyone shacking up, everyone having, like, I want everybody to be happy. So, yeah, if that ends up being a thing, we'll see. That's definitely going to be interesting. I'm wondering, are we going to get a lot of Cam this season because of the investigation? Once again, because Hightown, I just looked it up to confirm it is coming back for a third season. I hadn't heard anything at the time. It's been a while, so I hadn't heard anything. So I was wondering, because Riley's obviously, she plays one of the main characters in that. So I was curious, like, would she have had time to, like, film? I mean, so, like, I don't know if this would have coincided with any other schedule. I would assume, like, while season 2 was airing or something, she could have been, like, filming this. I don't know when this season filmed, but so she might be in a good chunk of this season. Maybe a lot of, maybe only a little bit, but I hope we get to see her around a lot more, especially if add in the whole potential her in Dallas thing. So that's definitely going to be interesting. But sad thing is, Michael's not going to know Alex has been gone for a while, because they're just going to be like, right, he's out doing the stuff with the balloons, so it'll be a while. But they had that glass, like, right, which will help. I'm sure that's going to be an important thing to consider, is that the glass that Michael gave Alex will make it so that, yeah, these pieces of glass want to connect together, so that'll be their way to find Alex in the end. So, I don't think he's dead or anything. I think it's like, right, she's getting him, forcing him to work on something. Once again, maybe Allie's in the same boat as well. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.